Now that's more like it. Boston Celtics come in, get a nice bounce back win, blowing out the Houston Rockets. Ime Udoka was here. Did anybody even care? I'm going to talk about it with a special guest here on the bonus Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and I got you covered every day with a free, fresh podcast, even if it's looking diagonally here. Here from the Garden, makeshift. I'm John Karalis, host of this Locked On Celtics podcast. I cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal, and this is...
Oh, are you? I mean, okay. I guess I'll do it myself.
I don't remember your name.
You don't. Wow. Oh man. So not
Jackson
only
Gatlin from Locked On Rockets. Everybody
in Boston has all forgotten not only Ime Udoka, they've also clearly
that's right.
Me. Oh,
that
man.
is correct.
This loss erased a lot of things, a lot of friendships, a lot of history.
That's right. Friendships, especially, are done. A mere shell of themselves. Okay, so we're here. It's the Celtics. Got the what was the final score?
145,
113. We're going to start with Jackson here because he's here. He's visiting from Houston, and it's a very neighborly thing to do. We're hopping on each other's podcast because I basically invited myself onto your podcast,
which was fantastic. It was very fun. So if you want to check out John and some of his thoughts over at Locked On Rockets, be sure to do that.
Go do that. All right, let's start with this, man. You're first of all, you're in town. I think people around Boston like to know, what have you thoughts of the city?
So first off, I haven't traveled much in my life, but the cities that I've been to, of all the cities that I've been to, Boston is easily top of my list already. Like I was just over in the remind me, it's North End over here. Yeah. You know, walking up and down Hanover. I did like the Freedom Trail, kind of, you know, some of the touristy stuff. But really just walking in, you know, going into little pockets, checking out different shops, chatting with locals, that kind of thing. I got kind of lost for just hours the day before the game. I came in the day before, so I was here Friday afternoon, got to really explore, check out a couple spots. I went to Paulie's, got myself a lobster roll, went to the bakery that you recommended, Mike's Pastry, got myself a couple cannolis. It's been a fantastic experience so far.
Right. Well, I'm glad that fantastic experience led up to
the game was not a fantastic experience.
That's where your fantastic experience ended.
Stop. Just sudden they hit the brakes. Yeah. Oh man.
I will get into the Celtics and everything that I think worked in just a second. And it's really, I think, is as simple as Celtics equal good, Rockets equal I don't want to say bad. They're not a bad team. They're now 500, right? 19-19.
Yep.
So they've I think played a little bit over their heads a little bit, but regardless, not a bad team. They play hard. It's just I think the Celtics were good and they figured it out. They were motivated, and the Rockets on a back-to-back, a tough win, like a last-second win over Detroit. It was kind of tough to go from Detroit to Boston and with all that emotion to get that same thing and last the way it did. But it was tough early on.
I mean, look, it was at one point in this game with about just under 6 minutes to go in the second quarter. It was 51-50. So Celtics only leading by 1 point before they reeled off a big run and took the 11-point lead into halftime and then started the third quarter. Ime Udoka talked about the Rockets. Their competitiveness was not quite there in the third quarter. He didn't like their physicality, really just didn't like a lot of their body language in the second half of this game. Almost like they were kind of just resigned to the fact, hey, we're already trailing by 11. We're going to lose. And it, like you said, right, it's second night of a back-to-back. They had a lot of kind of things stacked against them in this game. But this game also highlighted one of the main Achilles heels of this Rockets team this season. And their defense has been better than anybody could have really expected this year. They've been largely a top 5 defense most of the season. They lost Dillon Brooks for a chunk of games, and their defense kind of started to crater without him. Now you also don't have Tari Eason in the lineup. They're the 2 best defenders for this Rockets team. So not having them leads to a team that is not as good defensively what a novel concept, right? You miss some of your key guys on one side of the floor. Suddenly that side of the floor starts to look a little bit worse. But the other area that is really interesting for them is offensively, they just don't have enough shooting, man. And we talked about the 3-point discrepancy over on Locked On Rockets. You highlighted it, but it was the Celtics were like plus 50 from the 3-point line?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
It's, this Rockets team, they have a lot of good things going for them. They've adopted Ime's kind of defense first identity.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big question marks coming this year was cool. Alperen Şengün's incredible. He's an offensive phenom. He's an up and coming star, maybe a potential all-star this season, possibly. But defensively, what's he going to look like kind of as your 5 in the middle, right? And he's bought in and the defense has been great, but they also offensively kind of play like a team out of the, 90s or early 2000s where, their final score tallies are often really low. They like to get these, raggedy, grinded out wins, and they just don't shoot enough threes for the modern NBA.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. You just even their volume. And it's not only, so they're a bad 3-point shooting team and they don't shoot enough threes to begin with. That's just really hard to win sometimes in today's NBA.
I don't have the box score in front of me, but I think it was 7 of 35.
That sounds about right. Yeah, it wasn't good.
Yeah, and the Celtics made 24 3-pointers.
I looked at you at one point in the game and I said, John, what is the Celtics best 3-point percentage this season? Because at one point they were hovering around like 53, 54%. I was like, this has got to be it if it's not.
One of 3 times the Celtics have hit 50+% from 3 this year. Obviously, when you do that, you win. The high was 57% when they put up 155 points against the Indiana Pacers in a early season. Just the Pacers came in, no Halliburton, couldn't hit a shot. The Celtics hit every damn shot, and it was over in a hurry. But yeah, I think it's as simple as the Celtics. They couldn't miss. They really could not miss from 3. And you were like, this is incredible shot making.
It really wasn't even like a lack of breakdowns. Like some of the early defense was actually pretty decent at times. Like, Tatum had a hand in his face or Jaylen Brown or there were some, I think the biggest ones were the open shots that Porzingis actually got because the Rockets were trying to adopt this new defensive game plan. Ime talked about them wanting to be a little bit more aggressive on Jaylen and Jayson in this game, trying to, send extra bodies at them, trapping them occasionally, and it really didn't slow them down at all, unfortunately, for the Rockets. But that also led to some open looks for Kristaps Porzingis because he was the guy with him popping out to the 3-point line. He was the guy that Ime thought they could kind of cheat off of a little bit and kind of stunt and recover and get back. And it just didn't work. And guys hit shots up and down the entire Celtics roster.
Yeah, everybody was hitting. And that's one of the points I'm going to make as I transition into what the Celtics did. The bigger thing, not even so much that Tatum and Brown were hitting shots. When Tatum is hitting the pull-up shots, like just right in people's faces, there's no you don't win those games. Like when Tatum's hitting shots like that, you're not going to win. But it's Porzingis who had been struggling a little bit, going 3 for 5 from 3. Derek White, to your point, going 3 for 5 from 3, and he's been in the post JJ Redick podcast slump. It's the same thing he did last year. He was shooting 40% from 3. He did the Redick podcast and he went into a slump. This year, literally the same thing happened.
Well, that's how JJ stays young and looking fresh. Is he saps the 3-point shooting energy from players? Yeah,
that's right.
That's
right. So he never ages.
He's like a vampire. He just takes the 3-point shooting.
That's right. All right. Well, I'm going to let you go back and do your podcast so I can finish talking about the Boston Celtics here. JT Gatlin on Twitter. Monday Locked On NBA as well, and obviously the Locked On Rockets podcast, which is an up and coming. I know you're sitting there like you're coming at me. You're coming at me. This is just want to let everybody know that he does not miss an opportunity to let me know that he's gaining on me in subscribers. So anybody out here who's a Celtics fan who's just new, like you got to subscribe to the YouTube thing. So this young punk doesn't get the satisfaction of catching the Locked On Celtics podcast and YouTube subscribers.
Hey, at least I'm a respectful young punk, John, because I specifically chose, rather than coming here and displaying the haircut look, I specifically wore the beanie to hide the beautiful locks, just out of respect. Okay, man?
Wow. Okay. I'm about to trash your trash ass Rockets right now. Go do your podcast. We'll see you in a bit. All right, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. Now just featuring me, John Karalis. This is fun. This is like Jackson is like over there in the corner doing his podcast, and we're both here at the TD Garden after this game. So my quick takes here on this bonus podcast. Again, make sure, by the way, just subscribe. I didn't do my full normal intro where people are used to probably can say the words along with me as I'm doing that. But on this, it's a Saturday night. It's getting done early because the Celtics got their work done early. So this is just a fun kind of special Saturday into Sunday podcast. By the way, this week is going to be fun. Later on this week, plan is to have Drew Carter, Celtics new road Celtics voice, the play-by-play guy there. So he'll be there at the end of the week. We've got obviously podcasts all week long. Got a mailbag podcast coming up tomorrow for Monday. So johnkaralis.com/mailbag. I got a ton of questions already, but you can get those in. All right. So nice response for the Celtics. They did acknowledge after the game that they wanted to kind of avoid a letdown after the Milwaukee Bucks loss. That was ugly and gross. And, hey, what more can you say about that? Tatum said, look, we got our asses kicked and we wanted to have I wanted to come out and play well. Like, of course I wanted to win. Of course I wanted to win when Ime was here and all of that stuff. But more so than anything, just getting the taste of that Milwaukee Bucks game out of their mouths and coming in. And like I just said with Jackson, having that that type of game where, all right, it didn't go great to start, but they slowly figured it out. They got themselves together. They figured out how to defend. The second half defense was a lot better. They gave up 31 points in the first quarter. It was 35-31, I believe, after one quarter. And then after that, they were able to kind of hold Houston closer to that 25-point mark. And it was interesting where Joe was talking about after the game, if you hold a team to a 25-point quarter, you have a 49% chance if to win if you hold them to one, a 68% chance to win if you hold the other team to two 25-point quarters. Interesting stats. I didn't even realize that. So they, after the 31-point quarter, they gave up 27, 28, and 27. Not 25, but not 31. And so better defense. Not the best, and they still have things to work on. And this is where I think the crux of this game falls. It's a nice response, right? Jaylen comes out, has a dominant third quarter, 21 points in the third quarter. Tatum has a dominant second quarter. So after the kind of back and forth feeling out first quarter, Tatum goes off and they have that 11-point lead. Jaylen goes off and that lead grows to more than 20, grows into 30. And then they get it up to as high as 36. Tatum gets ejected, which was, what are you going to do? He said after the game, I said my piece. I have to defend myself. He's aware of the text. No one's really worried about it. No one seems to care a whole lot. It's something that I'm not the biggest fan of. Say your piece and move on. But at that point, I can argue that he shouldn't have even been on the floor. So getting himself ejected was his way of saying, like, I'm done with this game anyway. I'm going to go in the back and start icing and take my shower and whatever. So anyway, that besides the point, they came out, they had their nice response. They had their great 3-point shooting. The 3-point shooting was, out of this world. They shot 24 of 47. So when Jackson talks about the volume, their number was 7 of 30. So 7 of 30, the Rockets shot 23%. Boston shot 47 3-pointers. So they were at 47 3-pointers, 48 2-pointers, which is, right at that 50-50 balance that you're kind of looking at. They hit 24. So the Rockets were outscored 72-21 from the 3-point line. That's outrageous. No team is ever going to win. No team, nowhere, no how. No team wins a game when you're outscored by that much. When you're outscored by 51 at the 3-point line. No team wins that game. So the Celtics, their hot shooting kind of carried them through. So it was great to see. And look, you run down the lineup, 4 of 6 for Jaylen, 4 of 7 from Tatum. Tatum's hitting the contested pull-up jumpers. He's up over like 50% since in January on those pull-up jumpers, those pull-up three-pointers. So when those are going, you're not going to win. Porzingis and Derek White each went 3 for 5, like I mentioned before. Pritchard's 3 for 6. Hauser, of all people, is the one guy who couldn't really connect more consistently. But Svi Mikhailuk, even in some garbage time, hit 2 of 3. So guys who have been struggling a little bit got their 3-pointers off. But at the same time, Boston lost in some of the margins. I asked Joe Mazzulla after the game, you love the math. You love when the 3-pointers are falling. The math behind the 3-pointers, big Joe Mazzulla thing. But you also love the margins. And you got outshot. They had 99 shots to Boston's 95. They took more free throws, 30 to Boston's 25. And they won that battle by 7. They got 15 offensive rebounds to Boston's 10. Those are all important aspects of the game that Mazzulla will highlight over and over and over again when he talks about the margins and things like that contribute to winning. So the Celtics got the math part right. They got the margins part actually kind of wrong. And not to take away from the win, this is a good win. It's a big win. You win by 30. Like you can't say anything really bad about the win. But as Mazzulla said, actually he enjoyed the fact that there's something to take from this that he can look at his team and be like, hey, we got to get better at this. Like we gave up too many offensive rebounds. And that was a problem early on. You fouled too much. That was a problem. Because of those things, you got outshot, and you don't want to. You're not going to win a lot of the games when you get outshot like that. Now they outshot the Rockets, as Jackson mentioned. They outshot the Rockets by a bunch, and at the 3-point line. So by taking the 47 3-pointers. That allowed for the kind of volume to make up for some of that other stuff. And then, they just got hot. And even if they had hit, what would 40% be? 4, 12, 16, 17 or so, 18. So you hit like 6 fewer. That's an 18-point difference. Well, I mean, it was still a 32-point game. So let's say it's a 16-point difference. Then you end up winning by 16. So it still would have been a comfortable win probably if it was a more normal shooting night. But when you look at the margins, those are the things that Joe really highlights. That's room for improvement. So nice response out of the Milwaukee game. Yes, hot shooting is great, but the Celtics do have to make sure they're better at that stuff. And this is the hard part of the season to do it. Jaylen talked about it after the game. Mid-January is an easy time for guys to just kind of, and we talked about this on this podcast before, it's an easy time for guys to just kind of be like, we're good. We're good. I'm not going to give it the 100%. I don't have 100%. I'm going to give it 80 or 90. And that's the difference between winning and losing some of these games. And this is the hard part. This is a very mentally taxing part of the season. You see the All-Star break coming. It's a month away, literally a month away from the All-Star break. It's right around the corner. You're starting to make vacation plans, right? Like even like Derek White, Kristaps Porzingis, guys who are kind of on the fringe who might get an invite, who might be an injury replacement, maybe, but they're still like, they're looking at vacations. I'm sure guys like, Drew Holiday, his wife, are probably sitting there like, hey, where do we want to go for the week and get off my feet and like go swim on a beach somewhere, like that creeps in when you're making, even at your job, even at this job, whatever job it is, if you're starting to make vacation plans and your mind gets into vacation mode, like that creeps into your kind of mental state. So this is hard for every NBA player to kind of get past some of the doldrums. They are right around the halfway point of the season. And this is about the time where guys need those breaks. They have they're at 30-9 right now. They're 19-0 at home. So they're 3 games away from the halfway point of the regular season. I would say at least 11 to let's say 15 from what should be the actual halfway point of their season, taking into account playoffs in late June, mid-June. But anyway, this is the tough part for them, and they need to be mindful of those margins. Now, if you're looking out on the YouTube page over here and I see no narratives, that's my post-game piece for Boston Sports Journal is about the Celtics do not care, do not consider narratives at all. Teams don't, but like the scripts that are there, hey, it's Ime Udoka's return. They don't even like give you canned answers about like, oh yeah, that was nice. They don't want to think about it at all. Joe Mazzulla doesn't want his team to think about it at all. It's just a matter of they are focused on this day. What's this day? What do we need to do to win this game? And for the Celtics, Ime coming back, they were like, yeah, okay, that's not good to see him. Good to see him. That's nice. But that's where it ends. Good to see him. Who cares? He didn't care. That's for sure. The players, like they had their moments. They got to say hi and all of that stuff, but that's about it. Who cares? And I'm fine with that narrative. Like I don't think the fans care. I didn't want to make this about Ime Udoka at all. And I don't even, that's why I saved it to the end, because you kind of have to mention it. But he was introduced and there was, mixed reactions, some cheers, some boos. I swear the Celtics hit hit their theme music, their Jumbotron. Like, Eddie Palladino said, and the Rockets head coach, Ime Udoka. And before Ime Udoka came out of his mouth, like as the was happening, that Jumbotron hit. They didn't even want to give the fans a second. I swear that happened like faster than normal. So I don't think anybody wanted to deal with that. I don't think the Celtics wanted to deal with that. I'm pretty sure no one in the front office wanted to deal with the potential for a loss, Ime coming in and winning. So this is a perfect scenario, perfect case for Boston. They get the win. And they just, Joe Mazzulla just does not care about that stuff. He's challenging his players. He's challenging his staff. He's challenging us in the media to think a certain way. And like after the game, he came out, because I asked him before the game, I said, you got a lot of stuff going on here. You got blown out. You got Ime back. You're trying to protect a home court. Do you use that stuff as like a motivating tool, or do you prefer to just say, put it out of your heads, we don't want to deal with it? And he says, we don't want to deal with it. And he's like, we're not trying to prove anything. We're not trying, like, all that stuff. And after the game, he's sitting down to do his media availability. And he's looking at me. And he goes, so what do we prove today, Karalis? And I said, well, that's going to be my first question to you. He goes, don't ask me. I don't know. We didn't prove anything. And that's kind of like a challenge. It was kind of like a shot across the bow. Good-natured, totally fine, not like being a jerk or anything like that. Joe and I have a good relationship, so I take it as good-natured. But it's also like, don't ask me what we proved. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that narrative. That's how I took it. I don't want to hear that narrative. And I didn't ask him because that's not what I wanted to know. Like, you didn't prove anything. And it's good to be challenged that way. I want to be challenged that way. I want to, if that's not how you guys are thinking, then what are you thinking? Tell me what you're thinking. And so my first question was actually about the margins. How do you take a game where you won by as much as you did, and it's a good win, and you hit as many 3-pointers as you did, which you love to do, but also lost on those margins that you love to look at? And so he liked that question. But I don't care about narratives either. I joked in my piece, like, narratives make life easy for me. because it's very easy to do a color by numbers post game piece and be like, blah, 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 quote, 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 quote. Ime was back. Haha, whatever. But that's not how they want to operate, and that's not how they should operate. So Ime was back. They beat Ime. Jaylen Brown had a moment where he was like running out of bounds to chase after a ball, and he kind of like ran into Ime, and they had like a little hug. It was kind of a fun moment. But that's about it. That's about it. So Celtics get the win over Houston. The Ime stuff, put it to bed. It's over. It's over. Move on. We are done with it. And I'm done with this podcast. Bonus podcast on a Saturday. I'm going to podcast after every game. So nice to have you here with me. Love that you're with me on these nights. If you're a new listener, if you're new, subscribe. Again, don't let Jackson Gatlin get the best of us. Don't let the Rockets, don't let these Rockets punks, I don't know if you can hear me over there, get the best of us. This is the Boston Celtics. This is a Locked On Celtics podcast. So that means if you're with me every day, if you're one of my everydayers, I would love it if you can help me hold off the Locked On Rockets podcast. Spread the word. Share the podcast. Tell everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.